Hello, welcome back. So today we are going to talk about MongoDB and DynamoDB and how they are different from each other and whether you should choose one or the other for your projects. Let's go. Okay, so we are going to look at this comparison from this point of view. So I kind of browsed to MongoDB and DynamoDB documentation to find differences between them. And the red points basically are the differences, so we will talk about this in a moment. But first of all, DynamoDB is more considered as a key value store compared to MongoDB. MongoDB is often referred to as an object storage. However, DynamoDB can also do this. So the two systems are very similar in this aspect, in the sense that they can store object documents and you can access them differently, whether it is MongoDB or DynamoDB. So we will look at about this in a moment. So the both are schemaless. You have replication on MongoDB, meaning you can add more servers to replicate your data. On DynamoDB, your data is replicated by default. Amazon automatically scales your data across multiple servers. On MongoDB, you have triggers. On DynamoDB, to achieve the same thing, you have streams. So streams in DynamoDB, basically, it's like an event stream that publishes an event whenever something gets added or removed into your database. So you can subscribe to the streams in order to do specific actions, for example, add logging or rewrite the data into another system and so on. MongoDB, you have to use a server, which is an open source software that you can self-host yourself or host on your infrastructure in the cloud. You can do this. MongoDB also has a platform as a service, so you can just pay for your usage as a serverless offering, or you can pay for hosted servers on MongoDB side. What's important to know about MongoDB is that when you will be hosting your servers, you can choose to host your servers in AWS. You can choose to host them somewhere else, and that way you can have your database co-located with your application. So this is really important in the point of MongoDB. So this is I think this is one of those things that you can host MongoDB pretty much anywhere you want. Okay? DynamoDB does not have a server. You cannot install DynamoDB on your machine, basically. Actually, you can, but it's just for development purposes. And DynamoDB is clustered by default, meaning you do not have to manage any server, you do not have to scale memory, to scale CPU and so on. Everything is taken care of for you. And basically, the difference between MongoDB and DynamoDB in that sense is that when you will want to scale MongoDB in order to support more traffic, more queries and so on, you will have to basically throw more resources at MongoDB. On the other side, DynamoDB, you can just basically scale with your wallet, because DynamoDB allows you to have two kind of offerings. You can have on-demand pricing, where you can just let the solution decide for you to scale automatically whenever your need grows. So this can be used sometimes when you have a workload that is not predefined and you have peaks in traffic, for example. DynamoDB is awesome for that because it allows you to scale instantly. So this is really interesting. About the query flexibility, MongoDB, basically, when you store a document into MongoDB, you can query this document afterwards by either field of this document. So this gives you a lot of flexibility, but it's also a downside because MongoDB is not a SQL database. This means that whenever you are going to query by a field that does not have an index in MongoDB, of course your query will be slower than an indexed query. Okay? DynamoDB is kind of more strict on how you can query your data, because DynamoDB, basically you can query your data via one key. That's why you see that DynamoDB is a key value store, because basically in DynamoDB you have what you call a partition key and a sort key. Usually you will query your database using the partition key, and if you want to query further, you will use the sort key to, as the name implies, sort your data or make a specific selection about this queried data that you had previously targeted using the partition key. MongoDB is open source, it's free software, as in freedom. DynamoDB is proprietary, and you are kind of locked into the Amazon ecosystem. Okay. About the cost, MongoDB, basically, if you want to scale to a huge scale, you will have to throw massive money at it, because you will have to scale your CPU, scale your memory, and so on. So I think if you want to compare MongoDB servers and DynamoDB serverless offerings, I think DynamoDB is much cheaper for the same volume of traffic and for basically better performance if your application has been designed from the ground up to leverage DynamoDB. Because DynamoDB can get really cheap, but if it's not used correctly, it can get really expensive. Basically, for example, if you have an application where, I don't know, you need to query a lot of data every time and all the time, DynamoDB can get expensive because you are getting charged basically for reads and writes. So let's say you have an application, I don't know, that sends emails. You are going to send 1 million emails, store this in DynamoDB. You can just push this email in DynamoDB, but you are not going to read this very often. Okay, so that's 1 million items, 25 cents, you are good to go. MongoDB, to do the same thing, they have a serverless offering now on MongoDB, so it will be 10 cents. But yeah, the scale is not the same, the response times is not the same, the performance is not the same. So in this aspect, DynamoDB is much more performant than MongoDB if your application has been designed for it from the ground up. Okay. I want to go back on the point of query constraints and query flexibility from MongoDB. It's true that you can query fields however you want in MongoDB. But if you want this to be performant, you have to index those fields to be able to query them correctly and in a performant manner. DynamoDB does not allow you to query fields however you want, but you can create what they call secondary indexes. So this means that you can index whatever column you want in your data to query them as if this was your partition key. So this is kind of a trick that they found some years ago. It works, but what you need to know is that basically if you index all your documents with another column, basically it's like creating another table. So it's kind of an anti-pattern in DynamoDB to do that, even though it's a solution that you can do. And what is very powerful about DynamoDB, if you want to be able to query your data in any way you want and do stats and so on, is that you can couple DynamoDB with OpenSearch in Amazon, and in that way you can have the best of both worlds, because you can have DynamoDB awesome performance and scalability, and you can also leverage OpenSearch to do your queries or for analytical data and so on. So this is an amazing combo if you want to have the raw amazing performance of DynamoDB for your day-to-day use and your scalability. And if you want to exploit this data and create dashboards and stats and so on, the OpenSearch integration into DynamoDB is amazing for that. So yeah, let me know which one you use and if you have ever used DynamoDB, because I know a lot of developers used MongoDB because it was very popular with the MERN stack, the mean stack and so on. So yeah, let me know which one you use, and yeah, subscribe and like for more tech content like this. Ciao!